up, guys? It's John Nelson, and you are listening to the Starting Block Podcast. Guys, I want to thank you for joining the show. And if you're new to our show, here's how we operate. Our mission and objective here is to give you the tools to win, whether you're the athlete, the parent, or coach. We're here to help cut through some of the BS that's out. The greatest minds that are out there as well. We're on a mission to help you guys win. That's what this show's about. As always, I'm here with my co-host, Chris Scarborough. What's up, man?
Good afternoon, guys.
So let's go down our episode playlist because we are a little bit different than, like I said, your standard show. We actually have multiple shows within the show. So first episode you're going to hear from us is going to be our bi-weekly Q&A. That's where Chris and I will take the questions that you submit to us. Where can they submit those, Chris?
info@startingblockpodcast.com.
Those questions are going to be about training, performance, rehab, nutrition, anything around athletic development. We will tackle that bi-weekly episode. As we always say, I don't mind if you DM them to us. That's fine, but we prefer if you email them. That way we can keep things organized. That's Q&A. The next episode is a bi-weekly episode as well, and that's a guest interview. And that's what we have today. On here just a second, but the guest interview is just like every other podcast on the planet. We're going to bring on our colleagues and friends from across the country, and they're going to share their stories of success and what they do to win with their clients, patients. And as I always say, it's great to connect listeners with these like-minded individuals who share the same core values, same mission, that we do. So that's our guest interview, and then the final episode is going to be fact. Every week, as you know, it's actually been a minute since we've done one, but it's simply because I'm only going to put out stuff that I feel is relevant. So if something happened to me during the week or something's kind of what's
John
that?
Has not gotten pissed off enough. Somebody's got to piss John off.
Yeah, well, maybe by the time this episode is actually released, I will come out with another one. But we're only going to do those periodically. So that's our show breakdown. And then lastly, we do have a fee, and that is we ask you to pay your dues. Pay your dues and share the show. We do this for free right now. This costs us a lot of money. A lot of time. We love it. This is a passion. Like, I love to do this. And all I ask is that you just share the show. Share, subscribe, leave us a review. Just help get the message out. If you laughed, if you learned something, if you liked the guest, just anything, if you got value out of it, share it, get the message out, help us out, do us a solid. We appreciate it. Breakdown, and let's go ahead and get rolling. So today, as you are aware, because you couldn't read, you saw that we have a special guest on. We have entrepreneur, performance coach, ARP wave therapist, and a human explorer, Mr. David Buer. What's up, bro?
What's happening? Truly a pleasure to be here with you guys.
Yeah, great to have you.
And a fan of your guys' work. Truly am. Truly a fan of the content that you guys put out there, and the sacrifices that you guys make as far as your time and the efforts that you put forth to filter through and sort through a lot of the information or misinformation that's currently out there. Because I know that's quite challenging, especially with social media nowadays and being oversaturated with all this information, everyone being overstimulated with all this instantaneous content available there. So it becomes very difficult to sort through the bullshit.
No doubt. So, well, man, I think that you're already like my favorite guest just for the compliment. So I appreciate that, man. Thanks. But so we got a good show. I mean, as everybody knows, we don't have a script. Like, this is all authentic, and we just want to, be real. I think there's too many shows out there. There's a bunch of bullshit and scripted, and we're real. And so I actually, David, I mean, you and I, we've talked, and but when Chris brought you up to it, I didn't know who the hell you were. And he's like, man, you got to connect with this guy. I'm like, all right, cool, let's do it. And guys, we had a conversation. I think it was supposed to be like 10 minutes, and it probably went like 45 minutes. I'm like, done, sold. You're coming on the show, man.
It was a fantastic conversation, refreshing in many ways, and just the way it naturally evolve the organic nature of it. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, you got an
I'm excited to
incredible
be here
story.
and in your company.
Yeah, but you got an incredible story, man. And so let's just start out with that. Share, what's share with me. How'd you get going in all this?
How'd I get going in all of this? Well, I'm a descendant of immigrants that came to this country from Russia and former Soviet republics, and was privileged to watch my parents' struggles and how they've overcome obstacles and challenges to um, create a life for themselves here. The epitome of the American dream, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so, watching them um, in that process, we grew up together. My mother had me at 16 years old. My father was 18, and so we grew up together. And they set this unbelievable example of what true work ethic and sacrifice and drive is about. Unfortunately, um, as a kid, I kind of fell into um, I guess you would say I had a level of social anxiety. I was a shy kid. I wasn't really into sports, wasn't very good at sports. So I hid away in my passion, which was art and food. And I was, one of the heavier kids in school, and you could easily find me hiding in a bathroom or under a bed, snacking on, a donut or a slice of pizza. Um, and it wasn't until um, into my teens, a little preteens, that I fell in love with boxing. That was my first passion, and I fell in love with that by watching Mike Tyson fighting. Right, my dad had him on HBO, and I was exposed to it. And then I went back to my room and I practiced everything that I saw Mike do. Right, and then I went back to school, and all those kids that made fun of me, because English was my second language. So when I started school, thirsty was the only word that I spoke new in English, and so every time I had to go to the restroom, for some reason, the teachers kept bringing me to the water fountain. So go figure. But but due to that language barrier, due to um, being shy, in nature, and having that level of social anxiety, and not being one of the popular or athletic kids, you were exposed to some, um, humor, right? Childhood, humor, and being the focus of jokes, and I guess you would say, to a certain level, in our society today, it'd be considered bullying, right?
Right.
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so I went back to school after practicing, what I saw on TV, and as in a form of self-defense, I was able to administer some payback, and which created a level of concern for the administration at school, and so my dad, I was, there were some of the kids had some significant physical damage, and so my dad went to the school and said, "Hey, look, he's a good kid. He has great intentions. It was a self-defense. Let's channel this." And that's when he brought me to Gleason's gym, and that was the start of my passion and curiosity for sports, and kind of evolved from there to just exploring everything that there was human performance related, and and through literature. We didn't have access to so much information that like we do now, whereas quickly you had to actually work for it. You had to research
Yeah.
it, and
Yeah. You had to put
put
some time in.
forth
Yeah.
a significant amount of time, and seek out individuals that had this high level of expertise and credibility, and then be exposed to it, over a period of time, and then, you know, decide whether or not it made sense, right? If the information that was being relayed to you, and the training that you were exposed to, and the knowledge that you were exposed to, was something that was going to elevate you in a way that you were seeking, right?
So before we go down that path
I
of
actually,
you getting involved in
yeah,
performance and all that, and this is why we need to change it from a guest interview, because I'm a terrible interviewer and I like to listen to hear the story, but I'm gonna let you gloss over a fact that you glossed over on in the beginning, because one of the things that intrigued me so much about your story when we first talked was the fact that you are the son of immigrants, and your story, parents' story, is literally the epitome of the American dream. And that is a dream that is being shattered in front of our face right now. And that really fires me up. This show is something that I can give back to our country for those that, if you've been on the show, but in there, I send a welcome email and I make it very clear, like, we're and our country needs to win. I've got a big American flag tattooed on my forearm, and it's because of stories like David that I get so emotional and fired up about, coming to this country and excelling and succeeding and building a life, because it's fucking awesome and I love it. And I don't want you to gloss over that, man, because where mentality that you developed, it obviously is going to show with a certain coach that you work under, and I know we're going to get there. And like, I don't know, man, it really means a lot to me just to hear your story. And I just want to hear your take on it. Like what is your take on where things are with that? Like, not just, we don't have to get all political, but it's impacting more than just our border. It's impacting our kids,
absolutely. Growing up, when we're gonna touch on that work ethic aspect, right? When a toy would break in one of my toys that I was playing with would break, or a household appliance, one of the things that my dad would say to me is, if another man, figured out how to create this item, came up with the idea to create it, right? And then there's another man that's paid to be able to fix this item, right? Why can't you figure it out, right? And so what he would do is he would leave me there, and I would take some time to try to figure out how we could approach this. How could we solve this puzzle, right? It's a puzzle. How can we fix this? And then I'd go, grab him, and we'd come back over to, whether it was an appliance, it was my bicycle, right? Whatever it was. And then we would apply my theory of how we could potentially fix this item, right? And that really kind of stayed with me in every aspect of my life, right? Because if another man can figure out how to do it, if there's my dad would always say, if there's the will, there's a way, right? You can figure it
Yeah.
out. It may take you a little more time than somebody else, but as long as you put in that intent, you could potentially create that positive outcome that you're looking for. And growing up, everything that was instilled with me was about having pride, right, in everything that you do, right?
That's a huge statement right there,
John,
man. Having pride, yes, because that is
pride, and look,
people in our country right now.
Absolutely, having pride. Another thing that's stripped away is awareness, right? Because it's so difficult for people to have awareness due to this overwhelming amount of stimulus that's coming at them from a variety of directions, right? That ability to concentrate and focus, and everyone's quick to label each other as having ADHD, right? Self-diagnosed, right? Or hyper attention deficit disorder, right? And so it's that awareness, that focus, that concentration, that intent, that effort, that pride, right, in everything that you do, right? And we discussed the John Wick movie. There was a quote said in it, but it was a quote that was said to me by my parents when I was growing up. How you do anything is how you do everything, right? How you make your bed, whether or not you make your bed first thing in the morning, which wasn't optional, right? For me, growing up, the first thing I had to do, make my bed. And then it was how I made my bed, right? I had to show my parents that I take pride and respect, right? The things that I have a privilege to have, because there are kids that don't necessarily have their own bed or have their own room, right? So it's about taking pride and respecting the privileges that you have and that you're exposed to, right? Your bathroom, right? It's forget even how you brush your teeth, right? My my mom was on me about that, making sure that the bathroom was clean, the way the clothes were folded, right? Cleaning your dish right after you got done, having your breakfast, and then you don't just go up to the sink and bring your own dish. You see if there's anything else at the table that you can, take with you and bring it over. It's that level of awareness. It's don't be selfish as far as just your needs, but constantly being aware of the people and the situations around you and how you can impact them. Because I believe that goes a very long way, right? And I
Yeah.
think that's very much lost. And I mean, hell, you can open the door for somebody, right, walking into a restaurant
Yeah. A lot of times they won't even acknowledge it.
a store, right? They won't acknowledge it. They won't say thank you, anything along those lines, right?
Mhm.
Which is a shame. But that's kind of the culture that we're in right now.
Mhm.
And it's unfortunate. It's
Yeah.
very unfortunate. And discipline, right? With when it comes to things that you do at home and at school, kids growing up, I think it's a very challenging situation right now for teachers as well, right? Because even those that are truly passionate about their their impact on a child, right, and their development, aiding in the child's development, they're handcuffed in a lot of ways,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. Teachers and coaches
Participation
like us that are here
trophies
to try
and
to help instill some of those values you talked about, we turn out to be the bad guys.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And unfortunately, society is, coddles the youth. It coddles athletes, right? It's everyone's overly sensitive. Everyone's
Mhm.
quickly,
Right.
quickly offended, right? No one likes to take personal responsibility, right? Because my thing always is this, right? No matter what I'm doing, no matter what I'm involved with, whether it's a business project, whether it's personal health, whether it's my health, whether it's a client I'm working with and their outcomes and their success, I always approach it no matter what, it's my fault, right? Obviously, there's other variables, right, in there, but it's my fault because there's always something that you could have done better, right? There's always a level of greater attention, greater thought. There is no 100%. So when people say I gave it my all, no one in history has given it their all. There's always more. You can always look back at every single situation that you've ever been in, right? You can look back at yesterday, right, and say, could I have done X, Y, and Z better? Could I have had just a little bit more attention or focus on this item or this activity I was involved with, right? Could I have been more present in a particular conversation, right? Could I have answered the question a little bit better? Could I have been a more dynamic speaker? Could I have been, used better humor, right? Whatever it may be, right? There's always something that can be improved upon. And so we have to be critical of ourselves. We have to be aware of ourselves and be honest with ourselves, right? And I
So
think
these
that's
values
something that's
that help
lost.
your family succeed and helped you, succeed and develop as a human and an athlete. Like, how did those qualities influence your experiences in strength performance? How did it influence your success and finding somebody to coach you, like in that same respect?
Well, accountability, responsibility.
By the way, this is some David
force.
Goggins stuff here, not David Buer. This is David Goggins, like motivation material right now.
No, but it's the reality. Look, human beings hate to do anything that requires them to focus, concentrate, be aware, be present, um, be outside, be uncomfortable, get outside of their comfort zone, right? The human beings are very dysfunctional when it comes to those things, right? In today's day and age, because again, the what they're exposed to nowadays, right, as far as their upbringing at home, right? A lot of parents, if it's a two-parent household, right, in most cases, both parents have to work, right? So they're not home, and a lot of times it's social media that is raising the kids and influencing the kids, which is very unfortunate, because it's the parents that are creating that initial foundation, right, of character and perspective and accountability, and it's critical, especially at a young age, for development. But it takes a village, though, right? So if that's lost at home, it's most likely lost when they're exposed to it in the school system, as well, as we discussed. So I mean, there's so many variables when it comes to this, but look, like, even in a single parent household, right, it's even more difficult, right, to be able to form and develop and create the foundation for these human beings, right? And touching on how I was able to find a coach to kind of, or who was my, I guess, mentor and greatest influence, growing up, my we moved from New York. I grew up in New York, and halfway through my freshman year in high school, we moved to Arizona. And my neighbor at the time was about my age, and at this point, I was into the football and track and field and wrestling and boxing, obviously, and mixed martial arts, and my next door neighbor, who we grew to be best friends, his father started to seek out locally who were some of the best strength and conditioning coaches, trainers, physical therapists out there, to connect us with, to help advance our athletic careers and athletic potential. And through that course of time, we were exposed to some incredible minds when it came to strength and conditioning and athletic performance, and exposed to working with and alongside some of the greatest athletes on the planet, from Dan O'Brien to Gary Hall to Stacy Dragila to Donovan McNabb to Aeneas Williams. I mean, all these huge names when it came to sports and athletic performance. But during that course of time, it was interesting that everyone was doing kind of the same thing, and then there was a lot of sports specific stuff that was being incorporated, and no one was getting better, right? There was no real significant advancement. And during that time period, my best friend's father came across some information on a gentleman that was, almost like a myth, right? Like a ghost, a
If you're
phantom,
listening on
and
audio, Dave's got a big old smile on his face right now, guys.
We,
and
we've
and that ju-
we've used that description many times. Yes, myth.
and
Yes.
that gentleman's name is Jay Schroeder. And I can very vividly remember the first time I was exposed to and got to meet Jay. It was out of basically, I show up to meet with Jay, and it's to a certain extent a janitorial storage area, storage room at a elementary school. And I walk in, and there's quite a few athletes in there, and some of them I recognized, some of them I didn't. And there I see Jay. He was on his laptop. He had his glasses on, and did not acknowledge me. Right? I waved to him. He did not acknowledge me. He came over. I said, "Hi, my name is David. We spoke on the phone briefly, and I'm interested in training with you, working with you." And he just looked at me, nodded his head, and walked off. And he walked
That seems
off
to be a
for
reoccurring
what felt
theme.
like at that
I've
time.
heard that before. Like, like which we're going to
at
have
least
this guy on the
15,
show
20
at some
minutes.
point,
Yeah.
but he said the same thing. You probably trained with him, David. Did you ever meet a guy by the name of Elliot Young?
I do not believe so, but it's
You guys were with Jay at roughly the
been a
same
couple of
time.
decades.
But yeah,
Yeah, it
his
was
story.
90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
90s, early 2000s, and so Jay, basically ignores me for a good 15, 20 minutes while he's, administering protocols and talking to some of the other athletes, and then finally came over and asked me what sport I played and how fast I was, and then asked, and then proceeded to follow that question with, is that downhill with the tailwind? He was,
Right.
great with flattery, right? But and then walked off again, came back, asked me to get into a lunge position, and then walked off, right? And I didn't know if I was supposed to stop after a certain point, and was completely unfamiliar with ISO lunges, ISO extreme lunges, any of that, right? So he walks off, and I follow, I walk over to him and I say, anything else, anything, and he asked me to jump. I jumped, and that was it, really, for the most part. I mean, he ignored me for the majority of that period, and said, "All right, have a good day." So I didn't know what to take from it, and he seemed busy, so I left. Called him up, and granted, like I'm a teenager at that point, right? But desperately wanted to train and be exposed to these mythical methodologies and
So wait, hold
protocols
on.
that
So Jay ignored you basically, and yet as a teenager, you took the initiative to reach back out to him. Did I get that right?
absolutely, because
Bingo.
again,
And that's what we were talking about at the
I
beginning of the show right there. That's willpower and drive right there, the characteristics of stuff. That's awesome. I hope some of you young athletes listening to this hear what David just said, because that is unbelievably valuable information right there.
well, what was valuable also is the lesson that was taught there that I didn't even realize necessarily that was being taught there, right? It was that patience, that perseverance, that will, that drive, that doing whatever it takes and overcoming anything in order to get to where you're trying to achieve, right? And look, that was Jay's way of seeing how bad you wanted it, right? How serious you were, right? So that he wasn't wasting his time with you, right? So I proceeded to call him up and tell him that I would like to train, and he told me to show up 5 o'clock in the morning on Monday, and bring a check, and that was when that journey and adventure began, which was, honestly, the most impactful, right, period in my life. And he was without question the most impactful person in my life, outside of, obviously parents who instilled all these great values and characteristics in me, right? But the things that I was able to learn from Jay during those years, working with him, were something that I still to this day continuously learn to apply in every aspect of my life, right? And it is directly and indirectly impacted everything from personal relationships to health, nutrition, performance, running a business. Um, it literally those same methodologies, approaches, the mentality, the protocols, the insight can literally be, you can cut and paste and apply to almost any situation, right? The things that, let's since I mentioned and referenced the iso extreme lunge, for example, that the three of us here are very familiar with. um, that one exercise, that one activity could literally tell you everything you need to know about any individual that you encounter, any client, any athlete, any person that you're dealing with, can tell you everything you need to know about them based on how they respond in that position and then that situation. And
All right,
I
so
think all of us can agree on that.
absolutely, yeah. But I want to kind of stay, along that same line. So let's specifically lessons that you learned. Okay, lessons you learned. So clearly physical. I mean, it's obviously you're at a place you're trying to get better at your sport, fill in the blank of whatever that sport is. So let's kind of go down that path specifically for David. What were some of those physical lessons you learned, but also all the pipes? Okay, all the pipes. How are you? I mean, what specifically are you now applying? Um, I mean, clearly you said that yes, I'm applying all these things even to this day. What are some of those things?
Well, I mean, the discipline, the focus, the awareness, the presence, the 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 ability to find more, right? There's always more, like we discussed. There is no 100%. It's unlocking next levels of potential. And look, the reality is these protocols, these methodologies literally set the foundation for anything that you wish to approach or pursue, right? They are designed to, and the system itself, right, is designed to create freedom, right? Freedom to do whatever you want to do, whenever you want to do it, without fear or restriction associated with potential setback or injury or pain or some sort of disorder, and perform it at a level to which of success that you're willing to sacrifice for, right? At whichever level you wish that you're willing to sacrifice for. Because I mean, that's the biggest thing right there. You have to sacrifice to the level of the success that you're looking to pursue or achieve, right? That's necessary to unlock that. And the steps that he incorporated, right, within the training that I still do, to this day, and incorporate with all the clients, right? It's you have to master, right, phase one before you could advance to phase two. And I think that's very much lost today in today's day and age, especially with a lot of coaches out there and performance enhancement specialists, trainers, even physical therapists, right? What's lost out there is, they're so concerned about keeping the kids entertained and interested, right? And present and keep their attention rather than really focusing on what is absolutely necessary in order for them to develop correctly, right? And in order for them to be able to recover from the next phase that they are exposed to, that next level of stress, that next level stimulus that they will be exposed to, right? So it's that prep, prepare to the level at which you wish to be able to recover from, right? It's
So
being able to.
you made that comment, and I think it's where you're going, but you're talking about like sacrificing to the level of success that you want. And I know that
You
there's
wish to
people
achieve,
that,
absolutely.
yeah, you wish to achieve. And so, I know that are going to ask, well, how do I know what that is? I think society has reached a point where it's so much we have to have the exact answer or exact formula because people are afraid to fail. And we have to know strategically exactly what it is. Speak on that a little bit.
Well,
Like,
I mean, look, like
Tanner,
failure is part of the process, right? And to a
yes, it
certain
is.
extent, if you look at the most successful individuals on any level, whether it's business, whether it's athletic performance, whether it's, in the world of training and physical therapy, I mean, the ones that have failed the most, right, tend to be the ones that we technically put on a pedestal nowadays because the lessons that they have learned in that process, right, the wisdom that they have gained through that process is priceless, is the reason why they are where they are today. You cannot be scared to fail, right? And you guys have been in, again, I'm going to reference the ISO extreme lunge position, for example, right? How easy is it 43 seconds in, 27 seconds in, a minute 45 in, 2:17, whatever it is, right? To say, oh my, this stimulus is so overwhelming, this discomfort is so great. I think this is it, right? I can't go any further, right? And what this is a little, I guess you would say, extreme, but if I were to put a gun to your head and say, could you have gone another 5 seconds? Right?
Yeah.
The answer is absolutely yes, right? If your life is on the line, would you figure out somehow, some way to advance further? And the answer to that question is always yes. There's always more. Just are you willing to deal, right, with the level of discomfort, right? That stimulus that you're going to be exposed, that overwhelming stimulus that you're going to be exposed to, right? Are you going to be willing to deal with that, right, in order to achieve and lock that next level? And that applies whether it's an ISO extreme lunge, studying for an exam, right? Because at a certain point, right, I just need to take a break, right? It's just, I need to take a break. I need to go for a walk. It's too much, right? But the difference between the individual that walks away at that point and the individual that figures out how to continue despite that level of discomfort is the one that in most cases is going to figure out how to have an edge in every aspect of life.
so I got kind of a follow. Well, I got a story first because I want to set it up, and then I have a question to follow it up. So I'm going to go back maybe 2 months, and I posted something on Instagram, and I got a direct message from David. And it was a very simple question: how long? I told him it's 4 minutes, and he never says you're going to get 5 minutes tonight. He never said that. He just starts coaching. I'm going to use the word coaching. I mean, I probably need to take a screenshot of all the different things. One of those was the gun to the head thing. So what I go to an ISO extreme lunge, and that night I get 5 minutes. I do the other side. I get 5 minutes. And so, David, did you intend when, first of all, do you even remember that?
I do very much so.
And then secondly, did you have in mind, even though you never actually said it, did you actually have in mind, Chris, you're doing this tonight? Was that the intent behind the questions?
Well, it's a great representation of your character, right? It's who it exposed who you are, right? That conversation and how you went about it, right? How you applied that information that we shared in that conversation, which allows you to now, is the reason why you've been able to distinguish yourself in what you do, right? It's how you handle those situations. But that conversation went even further as to, okay, you made 5 minutes, but what happened during the course of those 5 minutes? Because just because you made 5 minutes doesn't mean that there isn't more within that 5 minutes, right? Because within that 5 minutes, so much is discovered, so much is exposed, right? About yourself, about compensation patterns, about your thought process, about your emotions, about your pipes, right? So much is exposed in how you handle that situation, the intent that's applied during that time, the position, um, the awareness. I mean, all of those things, right? And then you can always look back and say, okay, at 1 minute and 17 seconds, right? When I started, my eyes started wander about the room, or I started paying attention to some, look, we're human beings, right? And we're always looking to figure out how we can function most efficiently and avoid that the as much discomfort, right, as possible, right? And so, to me, just because you made the 5 minutes doesn't necessarily mean that there weren't severe compensation patterns in the process. And they may not be as much as, okay, my right ankle began to pronate, or my hips shifted. It may have been something along the lines of, I began to think about something else, right? I began to look for salvation in and comfort, or release from this discomfort through a thought, or through seeking out an external stimulus to then compensate for this discomfort that I'm dealing with. Aiding in how you can manage it. How can I make this time pass by faster and less comfortable, right? As human beings, we're gonna seek that out, right? And it's about how honest you are with yourself during that time, as far as maintaining the integrity of the position, maintaining the and we talked about it in the last conversation we had. That's why precision in the description of the execution, to me, is critical, right? Um, One, initially you want to see how someone naturally responds, right? And then if you give them a specific description on how you need it executed, no matter what it is, right? Whatever the activity is, at what points are they breaking off of those specifics, right? So on an iso lunge, you're, taking it to your head position, where your visual, right, stimulus, as far as the direction of your vision, right? Are you looking around? Are you playing with your fingers, right? Are you creating these alternate stimulating, you know, factors out there, right? To alleviate and offload some of that stress that you're dealing with in that moment, right? It's still a form of compensation that you're having to overcome. And that's why having precision in the execution, whether it's a rebound exercise, whether it's an altitude drop, whether it's whatever it may, an iso extreme, an iso extreme eccentric, whatever, the precision in the execution and where was there faltering is critical. And in a lot of cases, you don't even realize some of those, the smallest little tendencies that you're not paying attention to are actually having a significant impact on your performance long term. Because again, as you know, I've heard you guys reference, and I think we're on the same page with it doesn't matter what you can do great once, right, or twice or three times. Is can you do that and replicate that over and over and over and over again? Maintain that level of precision, that level of focus, intent, awareness, you know, throughout the course of that, the duration of the application, right? And that's what sets apart, you know, your average athlete from a great athlete, right? It's being able to replicate that feeling, that sensation over and over and over. Call upon the right muscles at the right time. Call upon the right feelings, sensations, responses at the right time in order to be able to execute um, and optimize performance in anything that we do.
So you mentioned one time, I think when we had our last phone conversation, you mentioned that this is the one training system that you've seen that you've actually seen people become better. Like in other words, most training systems, the elite tend to stay the elite. You know, the good tend to stay good. The average tend to stay average. But you made a comment one time that this is the one system when it's executed appropriately, properly. It's the one way you've seen that can actually change your level or change that athlete's level, or not even the athlete. Could be the artist. Could change anybody's level of execution of whatever it is they choose to do.
And when I reference athlete, I'm actually just referencing general population, because I mean the reality is everything we do in everyday life is athletic, right? Requires some level of athleticism, right? Just because you're not an athlete, getting on and off a toilet, in and out of the car, up and down stairs, playing with your kid, putting away the dishes, whatever it may be, right? It's movement, right? And Jay, touches on, movement is the key to life, right? And the key to movement is velocity, and the key to velocity is position, right? And the thing right from the foundation of the system is the iso extremes, right? The extreme eccentrics. It's you're only as strong as your weakest link, right? So it's continuously training where everyone else fails. That's where you spend the most time training. Training where everyone spends the least time, that's where you spend the most time, right? Because that's where you can make up that ground. And that type of approach, right, applies to any and everything that we do in life, right? It's those uncomfortable conversations, it's those uncomfortable positions, it's those uncomfortable tasks that in most cases are where the greatest development take place, right? But you're only as strong as your weakest link. Every time you're performing an iso extreme, for example, you're seeking out the weakest, most vulnerable position and spending the most time in that position, right? Developing that position, right? Developing your ability to stabilize in that position, to maintain composure in that position, to find more in that position, right? Unlock that next level, unlock the next level, unlock the next level, right? I mean, and I think we discussed this before as well, when it comes to stretching, right, and flexibility and mobility, the human body is quite remarkable. And so for example, if you're in a relationship and your spouse or your boyfriend, your girlfriend cheat on you, right? The next relationship you're in, you're going to be more guarded, right? As far as how much of yourself you're going to allow to be exposed, right? Because you don't want to be vulnerable, because if you're vulnerable, there's a great chance that you're going to be hurt in that relationship as well, based off of the previous pattern. Our body works the same way when it comes to unlocking mobility, right, and range of motion. It restricts our range of motion in order to protect ourselves, right, through those weakest links, right? It restricts range of motion because by tightening, our body is able to stabilize by tightening up, right? Like before performing a heavy lift, for example, right? It's creating that internal cavity pressure, getting rigid, getting tight, creating that strong foundation. Same thing when it comes to range of motion. That's our body's natural way, restricting range of motion, creating that tightness, right, to protect you. And in order to unlock that range of motion, right, we have to send the correct signal, right, to our brain that we're no longer vulnerable in that next level position, right? Exceeding that restricted range of motion. We have to create that confidence that we can recover from that position, right? Because that's the biggest thing, right? The body will only allow you to access what it feels it can recover from. And that applies emotionally, psychologically, physically, intellectually. I mean, all of those things, right? It will only allow you access to what it feels it's prepared to recover from. Otherwise, there's a potential, setback, injury, that's going to be attached to it as part of the side effect. Everything has a side effect, right?
And that explains a lot of the recovery aspect of ISO extremes.
Yeah.
I mean,
And then we've been going for an hour now, and we just touched on the principles behind pipes and ISOs, and that took us a whole hour. I think we're gonna need to continue this recording into a part 2. What do you say, David?
Without question, without question. I don't think we've even scratched the surface, right, of where we want to take this conversation, right? I mean, there's so much depth to it, right? And the system itself teaches you and prepares you and trains you. It's obviously you never get there, you never arrive. There's always more, right? But there's nothing like it on the planet. It trains you and prepares you to be able to recover while simultaneously applying effort, intent, work, right? So for example, in a rebound exercise, for example, right? When you're calling upon the right muscles at the right time in the correct sequences, though it may be for a fraction of a second, right? That there's a change of signaling there, and that opposing muscle group at that moment, to a certain extent, has its recovery period before it's re-engaged, reactivated, re-stimulated, where it's shortening and lengthening, through that cycle, right? But it's the way you're programming yourself through those activities is to simultaneously perform. While performing at extremely high level, you're able to simultaneously recover, regenerate. So you're able to, kind of what Jay always touches upon, right? This system was designed to capitalize on where all other systems failed. And that was at high load, high volume, high velocity. And all of that has to do with, it starts with the foundation, right? Is that initial foundation step of those iso extremes, the extreme eccentrics that people find dull and boring and repetitive, but they're the most critical component of it all. And for the vast majority that implement it and showcase it, and especially with social media nowadays, is completely implemented incorrectly, and not enough time is spent developing that aspect, because the more proficient and efficient you are, and the more you've mastered that stage, right, that phase, the more capacity and the potential you have in the next phase and in anything that you're exposed to. The not only in order to the ability to perform, but the ability to recover from simultaneously, so that you're able to perform at an extremely high level, right? Over and over and over and over, while everyone else is starting to compensate and fatigue and break down, right? You haven't lost a step, right? You're able to continuously, I mean, we would do thousands and thousands of reps of certain exercises, right? Or activities with Jay, right? And how we responded during those activities, right? Let you know exactly how well and how much of that initial phase, right? The foundation stage you were able to utilize and apply, and how much of it, and how prepared are you for that next phase, because we want to expose ourselves, right? Because through exposure, right, is exposure, right? Through that vulnerability, we're able to discover where our weakest links are, where we break down, intellectually, physically, psychologically, emotionally, all of those things, right? Um, there's so many things that we haven't even touched on when it comes to, especially when it comes to, all these kids out there, and in these sports camps and training programs and facilities, and the first day there, they're on ladders, right? And they're doing plyometrics, and these kids have no business, executing any of these activities, but it looks cool, right? And parents get excited about it, and the kid is excited, and they want to come back. But what they don't realize is, through that process, they're perfecting imperfections, right? They're getting better at being mediocre. They're getting better at being being exposed, right? They're ingraining those bad habits, those vulnerabilities, that dysfunction that they may possess, right? That inefficient, getting better at that. They're getting more efficient at being dysfunctional.
That's a good one, but
They're becoming more proficient at being dysfunctional, right? And then applying that pattern in everything. And that's, unfortunately, it's, not everything is supposed to be fun, right? But you need to, you know, it's about discipline, right? It's knowing what needs to be done, right? It's knowing what needs to be done, and approaching it, right? Approaching it, and uh, uh, um, executing it with passion, with intent, with pride, with excitement, right? Though it may not be fun, right? But what you put in is exactly what you're going to get out of it, right? And if you go through the motions, right, through that process, through those activities, how do you expect to perform at a higher level, no matter what it is, right? And one of the quotes Jay would always say, right, is train, right, to the level at which you wish to perform, right?
Right.
If and you know, I heard your Boo's podcast that you guys had, the last episode, where you guys touched on in-season training, right? And bridging the gap between training and physical therapy and rehabilitation and to a certain extent, you know, your training is your rehabilitation. Your training should be designed to create the stimulus, right, and create the signaling that is then going to reduce your risk of injury, aid in your ability to recover, right? It's not, okay, I'm going to train, and then, you know, whatever ache and pain I get or injury or setback, then I'm going to go do my physical rehabilitation, my physical therapy, and then I'm going to go back to doing the same shit that I was doing that got me there in the first place, right?
Sure.
None of it fucking makes sense, right? It's not rational at all. But it creates more jobs, more positions, creates the need for, you know, more people to be in the room and being involved in the process. But in reality, your training should be preparing you to be able to cover more efficiently and effectively, and your ability to perform at a higher level. You know, it's all in the same, and it, you know, and obviously it all starts with the brain and neurologically, because your nervous system controls everything, right? It's controlling this conversation, it's controlling our response to the conversation, our bowel movements, our immune system, our everything, right? So if your nervous system is dysfunctional and that hasn't been addressed from the get-go, then it's only going to lead to compensation patterns in every aspect of your life beyond just physical or athletic. It's going to transfer in everything, right? And how you're able to manage your and your immune system, right? How you're able to recover or avoid, you know, getting sick, right? And being impacted by a virus or a bacteria. I mean, it's all in the same. It all starts from the same place.
And that's the end of episode 1.